Now that we have our working death and dying reactions and our hit reactions all working in the player, and we also have our environmental hazards in the game level, we're going to see what we can do to vary it up a little bit to see how these things all come together and to see how the visibility of these elements can be handled between our foreground and background elements also in the game level. So let's have a look here. Now we have our first placed spikes here. They're easily avoidable. They don't look that deadly. So say we want to have spikes here at this level that don't kill you, but we want to have spikes at a lower level that do kill you. Even though you might work out a way to calculate fall damage based on the distance you've actually fallen, an easier way that we'll handle this right now is we want the ability to assign different damage values to instances of the same blueprint spikes actor. So I'm going to open up the blueprint spikes first here. And we can remember we had our get hit event that passes a damage value to the player character. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a variable for damage. We'll just call it damage. And we'll make it a float. And we'll expose the variable so this can be edited per instance. We'll drag it into the world. We'll type, or I should say we'll connect this here. And we'll make the default value 0, just so it doesn't really do any damage. Now that we go back to our game level, we have these, and say we want these kind of spikes to only do maybe 20 points, meaning a character with 100 health could hit the spikes 5 times before they die. And then say we want to have some more spikes down low, maybe not that low. I'll raise this pit a little bit by out dragging these rock tiles to there. And I'll drag this sprite spikes here. And I'll drag these here so they are filling up the space. And these guys, like I said, these spikes will do more damage. So we'll set them to do a little more damage. So I can grab them all at once. And I can say, all right, you spikes do 100 damage. And then we say, you spikes do 20. We hit play. Character moves in here. Character hits the spikes, and takes some damage. And then they say they jump over them successfully. They move on. They can see some spikes at the bottom of the screen there, and they fall, and they flip and they die on the spikes. And if we test it out again, the character may have hit multiple spikes. They're doing more than just the basic 100 points. They might have done several hundred points, but it doesn't matter because there's a big bounce. It kills them either way, and we see the character flips through the air and lands on their back, regardless of where the spikes are in that distance there. Okay, so we need to make sure our foreground and background elements don't obscure spikes like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to reveal our vista so we can see it here. So if we hit play, it's still not in, and that is because why? It's because our sublevel vista by default has streaming method set to always loaded, or sorry, blueprint. I wish it said it always loaded by default, but for some reason it doesn't. Okay, so we start it and we see our foreground and background elements. We see our spikes, we jump our spikes, and we can just make out our other spikes down there at the bottom of the screen. We should probably bring them up a little bit more so we can see them. So if I do this, I align them with these, and then we drag these up here. Okay, we save that, and we show the vista again. Now if we hit play, we don't want the foreground spray elements to be covering up important things, so it's kind of important. You may have to custom tailor the contours and the silhouette of your gameplay for this reason, but we can see the spikes now. Clearly, they're still down there at the bottom of the screen. They're a little bit obscured, but they're still visible, even though the foreground elements are very prominent. So if we die here, we still bounce and we die down there. But say you want to show that a little more, well, you could in this case just grab your sprite silhouette here and you could drag this way down. Play and let's see how this looks. It's where you kind of have to manage the silhouettes. There we go, that's better. That definitely shows the foreground and background more the way we want. So that's how all of our elements come together, hazards and environment and a wide variety of sprites to create the game level. To review this module, we looked at creating a sprite actor as a hazard. This actor used an additional collision box to call a damage event in the player. We looked at damage events for hit reactions. We created a getHit event in the player character blueprint to freeze player inputs and drive animation for a hit reaction. This gave us our first event-based animation. We looked at a flipbook animation for hit reaction. We imported sprites and adjusted the keyframes for the hit reaction animation. We looked at the gameplay results of the hit reaction, and we added some force applications to the player character's movement and some color changes and flashes to its sprite. We looked at player health for hit or death. We added a health value to the player character to determine how much damage could be taken before a damage event resulted in a hit reaction or death. This gave us our final event-based animation. And we looked at animations for dying and death. We implemented the animations here by creating one flipbook for dying and one flipbook for death to be played when the player character had landed.